Most people think 1 acre of land is tiny. Ask the average person how much food an acre can produce, and they'll probably tell you not much. Maybe enough vegetables for a family, maybe a few chickens, maybe a small garden. But here's the truth. For thousands of years, entire families survived on far less than 1 acre. Not only survived, they produced vegetables, grains, fruit, eggs, milk, and meat from land that modern experts would call too small. So who's right? The people saying you need 20 acres to be self-sufficient, or the families who've been feeding themselves on 1 acre for generations? Today, we're going to answer that question with actual numbers, not opinions, not social media fantasies, real production estimates, real calorie counts, real examples from farms around the world. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how much food 1 acre can produce, how many people it can realistically feed, and why most people completely misunderstand the answer. Let's get into it. First, let's define what we're actually talking about. When people hear the word acre, they often imagine a huge piece of land. In reality, 1 acre is about 43,560 square feet. That's roughly the size of a football field without the end zones. Big enough to walk around comfortably, small enough that you can cross it in less than a minute. Now here's where things get interesting. The amount of food an acre produces depends entirely on what you grow. 1 acre of corn produces something completely different from 1 acre of potatoes. 1 acre of grazing land produces something completely different from intensive vegetables. And this is where most conversations go wrong. People compare the least productive systems to the most productive systems and end up with wildly different answers. So let's start with calories, because calories determine survival. A typical adult needs roughly 2,000 to 2,500 calories per day. That means one person needs around 730,000 to 900,000 calories annually. A family of 4 needs approximately 3 million calories annually. Keep that number in mind, 3 million calories.
Now, let's look at potatoes. Potatoes are one of the most productive food crops ever discovered. Under decent conditions, 1 acre can produce between 20,000 and 40,000 pounds of potatoes. Each pound contains roughly 350 calories. Do the math. At the lower end, that's around 7 million calories from a single acre. At the higher end, it can exceed 14 million calories. In pure survival terms, 1 acre of potatoes could theoretically provide enough calories for several people for an entire year. But nobody wants to live on potatoes alone. You need protein, you need fat, you need vitamins, you need variety. That's where diversified farming comes in. Now imagine dividing that acre into sections. A garden area for vegetables, a section for fruit trees, a section for small livestock, a section for staple crops. Suddenly, that acre becomes far more productive than most people imagine. Let's talk vegetables. Many intensive market gardeners produce 20,000 to 40,000 pounds of vegetables per acre every year. Tomatoes, carrots, cabbage, beans, peppers, onions, lettuce, squash. The numbers are almost hard to believe until you see it in person. A well-managed garden doesn't just produce food, it produces mountains of food. The average family often struggles to keep up with harvest season because there is simply so much coming out of the ground. But vegetables aren't where the real surprise happens. The real surprise is when animals enter the equation. Let's say you dedicate part of that acre to 6 laying hens. 6 healthy hens can produce roughly 1,500 to 2,000 eggs every year. That's hundreds of pounds of food from an area smaller than most living rooms. Add rabbits. 3 breeding females can produce over 100 pounds of meat annually while occupying very little space. add a pair of dairy goats. Now you're producing milk, cheese, yogurt, and other dairy products from animals that require only a fraction of the land cattle need.
Suddenly, that single acre isn't producing one type of food. It's producing an entire grocery store. Eggs, milk, vegetables, fruit, meat, honey, herbs. And the fascinating part is that each element supports the others. Animal manure improves soil fertility, fruit trees provide shade, garden scraps feed livestock, bees increase pollination. The system becomes more productive because the parts work together. This is exactly why traditional farming communities were so effective. They weren't trying to maximize one thing, they were maximizing everything. Now let's talk about one of the biggest myths on the internet, the idea that you need 10, 20, or even 50 acres to feed yourself. That's true if you're trying to farm the same way large commercial operations farm. Large farms often dedicate huge areas to a single crop. But self-sufficiency follows completely different rules. You're not trying to grow thousands of bushels of corn to sell on commodity markets. You're trying to produce food directly for your family. That changes everything. A tomato picked 20 feet from your kitchen has infinitely more value to your household than a truckload of corn headed to a processing plant. And that's why small farms can often produce far more food per acre than massive farms. Not because they're more efficient at one crop, because they're producing dozens of products at the same time. Now let's answer the big question. Can 1 acre feed a family? The honest answer is yes, but with an important condition. The acre must be managed intentionally. A neglected acre won't do much. A lawn won't feed anybody. But a carefully designed acre with vegetables, fruit trees, chickens, small livestock, compost systems, and water management can produce a shocking amount of food. Not necessarily every calorie, not every luxury, not coffee, not rice in every climate, not tropical fruit in northern regions, but enough food to dramatically reduce or even eliminate dependence on grocery stores. And that's the part most people never hear. The question isn't whether 1 acre can produce enough food. The question is whether you're willing to manage it like food-producing land instead of decorative land, because the numbers don't lie. For generations, families around the world have proven that small pieces of land can provide far more than most people think. The land was never the problem. The design was. Think about that for a second. Millions of people spend years dreaming about owning more land, more acreage, more space, more room to grow. But history tells a different story. Some of the most productive small farms ever created were built on surprisingly tiny pieces of land. What separated them from everyone else wasn't size, it was knowledge, planning, and systems. When every square foot has a purpose, 1 acre becomes far more powerful than most people can imagine. And once you understand that, you stop asking how much food 1 acre can produce. You start asking how much potential is being wasted on the land that already belongs to you. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you subscribe, because next time we're going even deeper into the exact crops, animals, and layouts that can turn a simple acre into a year-round food-producing system. You might never look at a small piece of land the same way again.